You can never have enough storage. So this week I decided I needed to give my house a little bit more storage, and I built this beautiful tall bookcase. It's got a single shelf here that is stationary and then 3 adjustable shelves, and it was all made from a single sheet of 3/4 inch plywood, a sheet of 1/4 inch plywood, and some 1x2s for trim. Let me show you how I did it.
I started out by ripping my sheet of plywood into 4 pieces, and I love to cut plywood on a sheet of rigid foam insulation. It helps to support it while I cut, and I can cut right into it. And on my circular saw, I used a rip cut. This one's by Craig, and it allows me to keep my cuts nice and straight. Once all the pieces were ripped, I took them over to my miter saw to cross-cut them to the final length. If you don't have a sliding miter saw, you can also cross-cut these out with your circular saw. Then I took the 2 side pieces over to my work table, and I marked out on the inside where the bottom or top of all of the permanent shelves would be. And that include one for the bottom, one for the middle shelf, and one for the top. Then I flipped the sides over and measured and marked where the center of all of those shelves would be and drew myself a guideline. To attach all of the shelves to the first side piece, I added wood glue on the side and then lined it up with my marks on the inside of the board. I temporarily tacked this into place with a few brad nails and got all of the boards temporarily tacked in. Then I used a countersink bit to drill holes into the center of those boards, and I secured them with 1 1/4 inch screws. This permanently attached those sides and shelves together. Once all of the boards were attached to one of the sides, I repeated on the other side. And I like this method to attach the sides because I'm going to be adding trim to the outside of my bookcase later, and the trim will completely cover all of these holes. You can also attach them with pocket holes if you choose not to do it this way, or if you don't want to add trim to your bookcase. With the frame of the bookcase assembled, I added holes for the adjustable shelves using a shelf pin jig. And don't be worried if your bookcase is very wobbly at this point. It will get much tighter once we add the frame and the back. Next, I cut a bunch of 1x2 and 1x1 pieces for my trim and my face frame. I decided to build the trim and the face frame using pocket holes to help prevent any gaping in the joints from wood movement possibilities. I also like that when I attach it to the bookcase later, I can use less nails, which means less holes to fill. So I created the side trim frame by attaching the rails between the upright stiles at the top, middle, and bottom perfectly in line with the shelves that I did before. Then I attached the second side onto all of these rails, so I created a complete frame. You will notice that my second side is done with a 1x1, and that is so that when I attach the frame to the side and then I attach the face frame to the front, the side only has a 1 1/2 inch wide trim as opposed to a slightly larger trim if I'd used a 1x2 board here as well. Then I created a second side frame, making sure to mirror it. And finally, I created the face frame with the 1x2 boards exactly the same way. These are just slightly bigger. Then I attached the side frame boards to the side of my bookcase, and I made sure that it was flush with the front, which means it actually hangs over the back a 1/4 inch, which will make it really easy to attach the bookcase back later on. And just a few brad nails is all that it required, and some wood glue to get this secure to the side. After both sides were attached, I attached the face frame to the front of the cabinet, and it was a little bigger and hung over the edges, so I just made sure to line up the center and let it hang over both edges just a little bit. Then to flush that up, you have a couple options. You can either use a high grit in your sandpaper and sand that smooth, and then step down in your sandpaper to get a nice clean finish, or you can use a flush cut bit in a trim router to flush that up on the side. Then I cut a 1/4 inch piece of plywood to fit into the back, and it fit nicely inside of those side trim pieces, and I attached it with some brad nails. Then to finish off the front of the adjustable shelves, I ironed on a little bit of edge banding and trimmed it to fit. And finally, it was time to add the top and base trim. I cut my pieces to size with a miter, and I found these little spring miter clamps that helped hold my mitered corners very tight while I attached it to my cabinet. I did this with 1 1/2 inch trim for the top and a 3 1/2 inch baseboard for the bottom.
And now your bookcase is ready to be finished however you want. I chose to finish mine by sealing the inside with a wipe-on polyurethane and painting the exterior black, and I love how it turned out. If you like this build, definitely follow along at housefulofhandmade.com for even more things to build for your home, and hit the like and subscribe button below.